on an amazing guest, Emmy award-winning meteorologist. She's actually the chief meteorologist for ABC News, and she reports every morning. You see her in Good Morning America, Ginger Zee. Welcome to the show, Ginger.
Thank you so much. I am so looking forward to it. Let's get some hot flashes and cool topics going.
Exactly. Well, we are really excited to talk about your new book and kind of mix your old book a little bit in with it. But inquiring minds want to know from the very start, you have two small children. How do you first off, what time do you get up every morning to do Good Morning America? And two, how do you do that?
Well, to give you an idea of what happened by midweek last night, I fell asleep while watching a movie with the kids, and my amazing husband, I will use that adjective today, allowed me to keep sleeping. And that is the only time I ever get the proper amount of sleep, is when I fall asleep prior to my children, which is obviously not possible most nights. And so I got almost 8 hours last night, which I think is because I was getting so little leading up to that. But anyway, not normal. I usually get up somewhere between 3:45 and 4:15 if I'm sleeping in. And then, get up, get ready, do all my things for GMA. So I've been doing morning shows for now 20 years exactly. And I cannot tell you that it ever feels good. There's never a point where you go, you know what? Yeah, that was right.
So you're just constantly tired. And then to mix in two kids, that's just, if they're up in the middle of the night, does your husband help you and get up in the middle of the night?
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. But thankfully Miles was not as great of a sleeper as the older one, Adrian was, but Adrian's been a fantastic sleeper. I can't complain. And, they do the once in a while nightmare and things, but that hasn't been too big of an issue. It's more the mornings on the weekend, the one morning that I get to sleep in, and I just, right by me, it's that creepy, Mommy. And then I look and it's 5:30 and I'm like, oh, it would have been nice to make it to the 6 on the clock, but yeah, whatever. Good morning, buddy.
Oh, well, that's one thing when your kids get older. Colleen and I are both empty nesters. That Colleen quit setting an alarm. That was one thing she did after she retired, was I quit setting. I still set an alarm. And Colleen, remember we roomed and you said, why did you never
travel with her again in the same room? She sets an alarm for no reason.
Oh,
just to have it.
Just out of habit. And that was one of that was one of the privileges I gave myself when my kids left for school. I had to have something to look forward to. So I said, you know what? The alarm is, after 30 years, the alarm's going to go away. But, we are so excited that you came on to talk about your new book, which is a little closer to home. And you wrote a book a few years ago called Natural Disaster, and you were very honest about some mental health struggles and your life story. And then in this book, you went even deeper into your family history, your history. And I think for the listeners, they see you smiling on Good Morning America every morning, happy, energetic. But like most women who have you're just at the baby steps of midlife, you've lived a life that's had positive and negative struggles and triumphs, and you're very honest about that. Why did you feel the need to write the second book and go a little deeper into your life story?
I saw what the first book did, and I didn't anticipate that. And that was actually change people's lives. And I'm not saying that in a, the farthest thing from humility way. I'm saying it because I get messages still today that say your book saved my life. And I did not anticipate that. And I thought, well, if I only told them what I told them there and that helped that much, imagine what I can do. And I almost take it as my responsibility, because I have the privilege of being able to be financially able. I have the family support, and I have the access to the therapy that helped me heal. So it's my job, I think, to do this and to at least start talking about how you heal and how healing is a lifelong journey. And that's what this book became about, was, okay, I know that there are traumas in my life and we all have trauma, but I know there are some traumas in my life that I have not gotten into even deep enough. And so with my therapist, I took a real focused look at recovering from trauma, healing from it, and then the maintenance of healing. And that's what I wanted this book to be about, because I think just saying that, like we talk about stigma, people talk about, and I do think it's getting better. I think there's a bigger stigma on the action of where do you go? What do you do? And how long do you go? It's like one thing to say, yeah, I see a therapist. I think we're all okay with that. But when I say I went to the hospital, everyone's like, ugh. something was very wrong with you, right? I'm like, yes, it was. And now it's not. And I think that's where I want it to change. So that's what the second book is really about.
Yeah, I've seen people who have, like you said, everybody deals with trauma. And I feel like when something traumatic happens, a lot of people feel like they don't have the time to deal with the trauma.
Yeah. Well,
And
they don't
they,
want to.
yes,
Yeah.
you don't want to, and it's almost like compartmentalizing it and you're putting it away.
Mhm.
Do you have any advice for someone that maybe about how soon you should deal with it?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it's something that you can take care of right away, or wait till you just feel like you yourself personally can process it.
I think it's the sooner the better. It's going to be different for every person, just like everybody grieves differently, but you do have to grieve from trauma. And this is what was so evident in my life as I went around to everyone's natural disaster. And I've been to everything from Katrina on. I was in this unique position of showing up and being the first person these people talked to when they lost everything. And to watch how humans react, for the most part, is pretty similar. And this is how I think how trauma works as well. You have the shock stage, which that you can't penetrate really. You're going to be in shock for different amounts of time. And then with a natural disaster, it's a little tougher to turn around and try to run away and ignore it because your house isn't there and you have nowhere to live. So you kind of have to face that. I do think that people process disaster faster and probably in the best way because they have to. The after effects of it, that's up to the individual and I think could be worked on considerably. But I think if we look at it like a tornado hit our house and imagine it like that and say it is time to not just find a safe place, which is what you need to do probably first, open up and talk to people, which is the most important part. Then you have to, because saying it, putting words to it is the beginning of rebuilding. That is the beginning of saying, okay, I'm clean, or it's the cleanup, it's the debris removal. And then it's going into the, how people, when I see that shock, they kind of in that zombie stage, then the next day or the day after, it starts to settle in the reality of it. And it gets really scary and sad and they're angry, frustrated, or sad. You kind of go through that point in it. And I'd say the most important thing for someone in trauma is to allow that. Say, this should be angry, frustrating, and sad. Feel anger, feel frustration, feel sadness, feel it all, and tell people that you feel this way. Because once you told that person, hey, this trauma happened to me, you already opened the door. Now you can tell them how you feel about it. And that's then the cleaning, right? After the debris removal, I think that's the cleaning. And now it's about the rebuilding. And I think it's how do you heal and how do you create this life that's going to go on with that as part of your story. You're never going to be able to not have the tornado hit your house again. You're never going to be able to not have that trauma have happened to you. So how do you take ownership of the trauma and keep it as part of your story? Not that you need to ruminate on it, but just say, this is who I am. And this is part of who I am. Now what? What did I learn from it? And I think that's where the more talking. So a lot of it's talking.
Yeah. I love the analogies. That was a great way to put it together.
When you are talking about taking ownership, and you certainly have, you mentioned in the book, you talk about yourself in the third person a lot. You talk about Renee, which is your middle name, and Disaster Ginger. And you're very honest about some experiences of rape and suicide. Do you think that not taking ownership from a very young age kind of snowballed that into your suicide attempts?
Absolutely. But I think that for the longest time, it really was about my lack of identity fusion, the lack of me being able to know who I was and if that person deserved life and if that person does, all of those. I was reading about how children process differently. And I always talk about my oldest being very much like me. He was just born a perfectionist and how I can help him. And I've heard most of the things that I was reading, but then one of them stuck out to me, after you model how to be imperfect, it's how do you talk about it? And I've been doing it wrong. I've been kind of emphasizing that everybody makes mistakes too much. I think I've been really too focused on making it like teachery. And I think for him, it's more about the quiet modeling. And what I'm going to try is the reverse, and that is finding times in the positive to build your identity in the positive way and focusing on that instead. So when he, has a makes a bad choice, remind him that globally, one bad choice does not make your entire life you're a bad boy, right? And I think that's something that I could have benefited greatly from. And I think every child can help, be helped, especially if they are not having a fused parental or extended family teaching them how to do that. I wish we could teach every kid how to regulate their emotions based on this moment. This choice doesn't even define the rest of the day, let alone the rest of your life or who you are. And I think that's something I really wished I would have done. And to add to the analogy of the storm, what has helped me heal even more after writing these books, and what I'd love for people to get, at the end of if I'm at a storm area for 3-4 days, by the end you start hearing the cliche, and then the community came together, and it's so beautiful and it's like I get so annoyed by that, but it's because it's true that you have to tell that story. The absolute best comes out of these people that share trauma. So if you share trauma and the healing, that's what being open and being in a group of people saying, oh my gosh, I had that too, that tornado was in my life too, being rape, being something else like that. And that community of mental health is something that I think is hopefully can change the world.
Yes, absolutely. And you talk about, I know you say your parents, they did the best they could. They sound like great people.
Yes.
But you are a child of divorce, and the whole custody situation for you and your brother is insane. So did you have to, I know that you said you had to, like, half the year with your mother and half the year with your father. Was that out of school districts?
No. Yes, no. Different school districts always. It was, my father lived always within like 30 minutes, but I don't know why, but that they made that feel like it was 4 hours. Like it was very hard. Like if I forgot something, a project at my mom's house, they're like, I'm not driving over there, right? It's just too bad. Remember it next time. So I think as a kid, and it did feel like 4 hours, because 30 minutes does feel like you're so far away when you're 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. But our custody agreement was so wild. And I understand that the idea is that my dad he had his own business in construction, and summer was when he had the most work. So that was not going to be the time we were with him. So he still wanted to have us. And so we would move on Christmas Day after waking up at my mom's and celebrating Christmas in the morning. We would take our suitcases and bags and move to my father's house on Christmas every year. And you talk about jarring for our kids, although the weird part is that was the only part we knew how to expect. Well, we are moving to dad's today. So then you move there for the next 3 months. And then on Easter, we would move back to my mom's. And then once a week and every other weekend, we would be at whose ever house we were not at.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand, like, I know custody can be difficult. I see my friends now who are divorced. I've got one particular friend. I'm enamored by how well they're doing divorce. And, it was her ex-husband moved into the same neighborhood, and she was like, this is weird, but it's like the best for her daughter, because her daughter can walk to dad's house. They're making choices that make it as doable as possible. Divorce is going to happen. It's inevitable. This is part of life, but like, make it less traumatic for everyone, especially your child. And I think that's something that we've learned a lot since the 80s. And I always ask people, like, any child of the 80s that was a part of a divorced family, tell me somebody that did it right. Crickets. Like, it was not, nobody knew how to do it. No one knew.
Yeah.
And now we just have a lot more, and we're open, it did become a community of divorce, I think. And it was kind of like, how do we do this better going forward?
Yeah. You answered that question for me. I was going to say, what advice would you give people going through it? And also just what you had to go through with each of your parents having more children in their new relationships, and how that made you and your brother feel. And I'm sure that had to contribute to what happened later for you,
Oh my gosh. I mean, yes. Both in good ways and bad. And that's the other thing. I have my best friend, Brad, who's part of the first book, chapter 7, he always likes to be referred to as, he always says, do you think that if you had kind of that fused love, you would be as successful as you are? Because maybe you wouldn't. He likes to try to spin it as it drove me. I'm like, well, I hope so. But yeah, I don't think I don't think it's necessary to stress your children so that they achieve. But I try to look at the positives of what happened when my parents remarried and had children. And I think it was just an age thing, that I was 14, and then a baby was born every year. And so now being a parent and understanding what it takes to have an infant and have a new family, I say new family, but yes, a new family. And then how a teenager perceives that, because they're the center of the universe, or they're supposed to be, right? I think that was such basic psychology that both my brother and I were like, where's a microphone? Somebody please listen to me. Somebody pay attention to me. And both in my romantic relationships, my friendships, and especially my drive to stand on a stage somewhere and have people listen to the thing that I'm passionate about, it was both good and bad. I think it would have been nice to have had that, but they wouldn't have known to do it any different. Again, this is not today.
Right.
You know? And I look at, and I don't blame them. And the one thing that we've worked on a lot, and if parents are listening here and they still haven't had a lot of conversation about it, I think what happened to us is they got divorced. They didn't speak for 12 years. That meant that none of us spoke about divorce or what it felt like or what it was, because it was kind of just the taboo topic that you don't do. And they really did not like each other, and that was evident. And then as we became adults, there were other kids, and we really didn't have time to talk about that because they didn't have time for anything. And we didn't talk about it. And all I think my brother and I really needed, and what has been so healing for me, is to have them say, I'm sorry that was hard on you. And it took me writing a book and talking to my mom about it to get to that place. But that's what I think, that's all I needed. And for me to forgive her, because she felt extreme guilt, and she still does, you know, and I'm trying to work with her on that. It's not about feeling guilty. We can't go back and erase the trauma. What we can do is say, here's how we'll deal with it going forward. And I loved having just you take ownership of it too. Say that was hard. You never said it was hard, and it was hard, you know. It's hard to compare, because then people will be like, okay, well, why don't you go spend some time in a refugee camp, right? They try to always do this game of like, my trauma is worse than it. Doesn't matter. You can't play that. It doesn't matter. We're all here, and we're all doing our absolute best, and we want to be loved, and we want to love. And just, I think that's it, and then the communication is what really allowed for the healing. And now as I become a parent, I have really let them off the hook, because I'm like, holy cow.
Not so easy, right?
Not so easy. I thought they had some sort of control or molding ability, and I don't know that that's true. Only to a certain point, right? Because I'm like, who is that kid, and how did he come out of?
Yes.
We have a completely different setup here. We have a very open, communicative, and my son is just like me, and I'm like, oh.
Yes, yeah. There's no magic secret, and I thought so too when I was younger. You know, like my parents know everything, and I'm like, oh, they didn't know everything.
Right. There's a certain part where you realize your parents are human. It's around 18 or 19, and you're like, wait a second, you're human too. You make mistakes.
You know, it was only like 5 years ago I realized there could be bad doctors or bad anything.
Oh, yeah.
Like that type of thought, though, is where we pedestal people, and our expectations of others is higher than even sometimes ourselves, which we don't realize we're doing, and we don't allow for human error, for any error. That's wild to me. I still am like, or I'm just gonna say, we have a roofer, and like they did a terrible job, right? And then how's their bad roofer? I guess I never thought like that. I just thought if you do a job, you do it to the best of your ability. Why would somebody, or why wouldn't they call us back? Do they not want to get paid? It's just, you know, but I think that revelation of not just our parents, but of other people, and that's how imperfect life is. And there will always be something as bad as, you know, sexual assault, and there'll always be something as bad as a bad doctor that doesn't see, you know, that just happens, and we have to be ready. And that's why we're all here to work on it together.
Right.
And have grace for ourselves and others. Yeah.
That's right. When you say that there's a bad doctor, you also talk a lot about therapy. And I found this for myself and family members. The first therapist you go to may not be the fit for you. The fifth therapist you go to may not be the fit for you. And I have this argument with my loved ones about, well, therapy doesn't work for me, and they just give it up. And any advice out there for us for ourselves and us dealing with our loved ones, saying, please keep going till you find your fit. I mean, any advice?
Part of it, I would tell them, you're right, it's hard to find. So you give them the credit of saying, you're absolutely right. This is not going to be easy. It takes hard work. Just like it takes hard work to find a partner in life, right? I mean, I dated plenty before I was able to understand what I needed, and before I was ready to know what I needed and was ready to be loved in the same way that I required to have just the right fit. And I think there are more than, and I've spoken about this, it wouldn't be a surprise to my husband. Of course, there are more than one fits of partners in our life. And sometimes we live through those, right? And people have that. And I think that could happen with therapists too, but I do think they're like a relationship. First of all, and this is the problem, I think, with the mental health, the community of therapy, it's set up, and my husband says it's like Tinder. What are you supposed to just go and look at people's pictures and kind of go, oh, so they focus on anxiety, no, this, no. He's like swiping, and he thought, this is the weirdest thing, because then you're just going to be basing it on a picture and the demographic of who you think might fit with you, and there is no funneled place to find, okay, let me give, except for the emergency room, there's no funneled place to get a fast diagnosis so that you can get focused over here to the people who do DBT therapy, which would be best for borderline personality disorder or for X, right? And then that's the thing, is we have primary care doctors for anything physical, and they know who to refer you to. And they do, some of them have the training and the ability to refer you to mental. So we should think about them and ask them. Don't forget to ask your primary care doctor. But I think that there has to be this in between, because it's either I am so suicidal, I go to the ER, or I'm lost on Tinder, right? And everybody in between, there's no funneling place. And so my next dream is to take this, whatever has created, or my purpose that has been created by these books. And just like Betty Ford made, the drug and alcohol addiction kind of McDonald's of drug and alcohol addiction, we need that. We need the branded, I can go there. It's not the scariest place in the world, but they are going to help me and they're going to change my life. We need that place where even my husband, who certainly doesn't need ER help, but would like to find the right type of therapist, can go and get focused help at a place that just works on that. And I was speaking to my therapist this week, and he said that is not available. That is not on a nationwide scale. And so I'd like to change that, because it shouldn't be this hard. And I have to add, I'm sorry, I'm just talking.
No.
It's good.
It's so hard. It's so hard for people who are in that place, even my husband, and your family members that are saying therapy's not for me. It's so hard for someone who is having one bad day, and then, maybe 5-6 days go by and it's okay. They're not going to be bringing themselves. But yet if you broke your leg, you would not expect that person to go walk themselves to the hospital. So this is our job as the team member, or your job as the family member, is to say, I know you think that, but I want to help you. I want to help set that up. Let me go look through that insurance thing. Because I know in my darkest times, I was not leafing through some sort of insurance book looking for the Tinder of it was too hard. I couldn't even run my day. You think I'm going to go be able to look for the right therapist? So I think being open to realizing we need help, and then once we say we need help, not just kind of leaving it there, actually getting the help of rolling them all the way to the door, and that's an important part.
Couldn't agree more. Absolutely. I also wanted to, I think a lot of women listening can relate to the fact that when you did have a traumatic event in your life, you went through anorexia, and I have a daughter who went through anorexia, so I know that what an emotional struggle that is. And then you went through some experiences with rape. You didn't shout out, I need therapy, I need help. You kind of compartmentalized them, and you went on and almost strove harder in your life to achieve more, saying, I'm going to put this over here on a shelf. But inevitably, that kind of hit a wall when you attempted suicide. And I think a lot of women, especially of our generation, were taught, just keep going, don't talk about it. Can you share some advice for them so that they don't get to that point where they think, I just can't deal with this anymore?
Well, if yours is as bad as mine was, I was not only compartmentalizing, I was actively saying that didn't happen, and then never speaking about it again. Not like a dirty secret that you're keeping. No, it didn't happen. Like that denial of, I don't even know. So I'd say if you have something like that and it's there, I would take time to go uncover the wound. I would go in there and clean it up and find out what was in there. And I thought not only writing is the easiest, inexpensive way to start doing that, and the safest, because unless you're worried about someone finding it and judging you on this. Writing is a safe way to put words to what happened to you. And it's really important to do that. And then I think the next step is to share it with someone impartial. It can be a therapist, a pastor, someone that you feel you can open up to. It can be a stranger. You'd be pretty amazed. And I mean, a stranger who talks about mental health a lot or something, you know, amazed at the DMs I get of people coming to me and saying, I've told nobody this. And they're telling a stranger who they watched on TV talk about a book once. It's powerful though. It's powerful because I'm the first person they told, just like in that disaster, I'm the first person in their face that they're telling what they're feeling about. There has to be that first person. And it doesn't have to be your mom. Probably isn't going to be, because that's where you're going to feel the most intimacy and connection. So it's a lot easier for, even after writing these books, I find my family to be the quietest because they've read it. Most of the one, you know, certainly my mom read it and we worked on what she felt comfortable with, but it's not her favorite topic to go back over. It's not her, but if I want to work on me and healing and all this, I can do it with my DM people. Well, here's how I'm feeling. Here's what I'm doing. There's a community beyond the people that are just right in your immediate family as well, and not forget about them. And then there's set up ones, right? The group therapies and the actual, you know, and I would highly recommend anything like that for different diagnoses. It can be even more powerful than one-on-one therapy sometimes, because you're able to hear how other people are either at the beginning, middle, or end of their journey, or maintenance part of their journey. I never should say end, and how they're maintaining. So I love that thought process of healing.
You also talked about the fact in the book that sometimes you felt like, okay, I think I'm in a good place. I don't need therapy anymore. And you just said that it's kind of a continuum.
Yes. That'd be like saying, okay, I went to a personal trainer for the last 5 years and I'm in sick shape. I'm good. I'm not going to go to the gym anymore.
Right.
That's not how it works. I think every single person should have access to and be committed to. And this is what's really changed my life, is I flipped the energy, time, and money that I put into physical health to less than I put into mental health. So if I've got that extra, you know, people will say, oh, I blocked out an hour for my activity for my body, which is wonderful. You absolutely should do that. And there are mental positives on that too. Why haven't we done that for our brain? Why didn't we take that hour or split it for a half hour and make it active yoga, yoga, but active meditation, and then a half hour of cardio? So thinking about our brain health first, foundational sleep, nutrition, and really making, I talk about like the food pyramid, but like the health pyramid, mine is mental health first. That's where I spend everything. And then everything else is blocked on top of it.